Hi everyone, this is Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a video for you showing several new products from the Simon Says Stamp Holly Jolly release. So what I have here are the new 3D embossing folders. I've opened up some of mine and I've already used some of them, but these are really cool, and this is something that really caught my eye the most from this release. So here's a look at some of the folders. You can't really see the design that well on the front, but if I flip it to the back, you can see a printed rendering of the design on the back of the packaging. So this is called Lumen, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I'm not sure. So I think it's like a really pretty floral design. Then we have one that would be really cool for fall, which is called Fall Foliage. Really nice leaves, and I can see this being inked in all sorts of fall colors, you know, like yellow, orange, red, even a little bit of brown. So a really nice fall background. Next one is this one. This is the Tumbled Hexagons embossing folder. This one's more of a modern geometric design. Another cool one, maybe a good one for masculine cards. Now this one I already took out of the packaging, and I don't remember the name of this folder, but you can see it's basically a background full of beautiful florals. Here's one that also has been taken out of the packaging, and this one is a really nice winter frame. I did emboss it and I tried ink blending over it and I stamped a sentiment. I'm not sure if you can see this design real well, but that's what it looks like. Okay. Then we have one that's with winter trees. Well, it's not necessarily winter trees. These are just trees. Let's get this. So here I already embossed this design. I tried embossing it with pigment ink to get color on my paper right away, so you can see this design a little bit better. And again, it's not necessarily a winter design. It can be well, it can be easily used for fall as well, like a late fall. So that's that. And one more that I have that I've been playing with the most actually is this beautiful floral embossing folder. So here I have these already embossed and printed. And this one's my favorite just because, you know, it's floral, it's dainty, and I can play with pretty pinks and yellows to emboss it. In this video, I wanted to show you how to get this look. So how do you get this either dual tone look where you have the white embossed areas and then the colored background, or how you get the multicolored background like you see on this example here. So it's actually very easy to do, and one of the things you will need for this are pigment inks. Now I have these. I've had these Avery Al inks in my stash for a very long time, and these are great inks, but mostly for, at least in my craft room, these are mostly used for various techniques. I don't necessarily stamp with them, I don't necessarily ink blend with them, but I do keep them in my drawer because I use them for techniques such as these with, with embossing folders. Now there are several ways how you can apply the ink onto the embossing folder, and some are more messier than others. If you look closely here, you can see that I have a little bit of the ink on the petals. That's because of the way that I was applying the ink onto my embossing folder. One of the ways to apply the ink, actually let's start from the beginning. So when you open your folder, you have two sides. You have one where the image is sort of, I don't know, debossed, I guess, and one where the image is raised. It's embossed. So when you touch your embossing folder, you can feel like this is the raised image. You don't want to ink this. You keep this free from any ink because that's actually what's going to be the back of the panel. So this will make the back of the panel. This, where the image is pressed into the plastic, this will make the front of the panel. And this is what we want to ink. I'm just going to get another piece of paper so that I can protect my work surface. And my embossing folder has already been inked. If I were to switch to different colors, I would probably use a baby wipe and wipe all of that excess ink off so that I could start with a clean sheet. But I'm not going to use different colors. I'm actually going to go ahead and use the exact same colors as I did before. So I want to have a combination of yellow and a combination of pink. So what I'm just going to do, I'm going to take my ink pad, and be careful because with this ink application, you can get a little bit of ink pad contamination. It doesn't matter for me because I only use these ink pads for techniques like this, so I don't mind. But if you're also using your ink pads for stamping or other things, you might want to be more careful. So I have my ink pad, and this is how I'm holding it. I'm trying to hold it like parallel. So if I were to pick up my embossing folder, I would try to hold my ink pad parallel to the embossing folder. This way, I'm not, because if I hold it like this, if I hold it at an angle, I will press more ink into the debossed areas. And that's how you get ink on petals over here, like this. So make sure you hold your ink pad straight and parallel to your embossing folder. Another tip I have for you is do not press too hard. You want to press lightly when you apply the ink. So I'm just tapping the ink onto the embossing folder, and you can hear the little tap. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. So I want the yellow ink to be in 2 sections on this design. Actually, let's make it 3 sections. So like a little bit here as well. And you can go as creative as you want. You don't have to use just one ink color. You can have multiple colors. You can have an ombre ink blended, well, not ink blended, ink pressed background if that's what you like. So we've applied our yellow. Next, I'm going to go ahead and use my light pink. This is Pixie. And apply it onto the areas where I don't have the ink. Now this is overlapping a little bit of the yellow, and you can see a bit of the yellow getting onto my Pixie ink pad. Like I said, I don't mind because that's what I use these ink pads for. But if you do mind, just be a little bit more careful. So I'm just going to keep tapping until I cover the entire surface of my embossing folder with this ink. And I am going a little bit in because not all of these areas in the center are debossed. Some of these are flat with the background, so I want to get a little bit of ink on there as well. Okay, I think that looks good enough. And I also have a darker pink. This is raspberry. So I'm just going to use that to add more pink to some sections on my background. And I can even go over yellow if I wanted to make like a really pretty orange perhaps. Okay, like you see, I am picking up some of that lighter pink and possibly even yellow on my ink pad, but that's fine. I don't mind that at all. Okay, and then maybe I need to add, let's do it this way. I need to add more pink at the top because I don't have any ink here at all at the very top of my embossing folder, at the fold. You can see like how I'm also getting ink onto the paper. So don't press. Make sure you're not pressing, because if you press your ink pad, you will get ink in those areas where you don't want any ink to sit. Okay, I think this is good. Now we do have a little bit of ink on the petals, and what you can take, you can use a Q-tip and wipe it clean. I'm just going to use my finger real quick. I'm not aiming for perfection. I just want to show you guys real quick how this is done. So it's not going to be perfectly clean, but that's good enough for me. Next, add a panel of white cardstock. And the way I like to do this is I like to lay my panel on the clean side of the embossing folder, okay? This way, sorry, I went off camera a little bit. So lay my paper on the clean side of the embossing folder and then close the embossing folder. This way my paper is not going to shift, it's not going to move, it's not going anywhere, and I'm going to get a nice impression. I have my die cutting machine. This is Platinum 6 by Spellbinders. It's actually a deep sea die cutting machine by Jane Davenport from Spellbinders, but it's the same as the Platinum 6. Now, what I have found the sandwich to be for this machine is my base platform, just my embossing folder, and if I want to have a deeper embossing, I just go ahead and add a couple of pieces of cardstock as a shim. And I also like to turn my folder a little bit. So I'm not putting it straight on my base platform. I am putting it at an angle. Then adding my paper, my shims, I mean, and sending that through the machine to emboss. Okay. Let's take a look. Ta-da! Very, very pretty. So that's how you do the multicolor background using your inks and these embossing folders. Now there is another way to apply ink onto the embossing folder that's possibly a little less messy, and that is using a brayer. Now here I have a brayer attachment for the Spellbinders 2-in-1. You can also use any other brayer for this. And in fact, I would prefer to use a slightly larger brayer, especially for the center section here. So let me just pop this right in. Okay, so I have my brayer attached. I do have leftover ink on it, but it's dry, so it's not going to mess up my other ink application. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply ink in the same way as I did before. So I've loaded my brayer, and now I'm loading my embossing folder. Now with the brayer, you have a better chance of success of not touching those debossed areas when you add the ink, because the brayer is a lot sturdier, so it's not as soft as the as the ink pad, so it's not going to touch those debossed areas when you add the ink. Now you actually do want to clean your brayer between the different colors of ink, and you do this like this by just swiping it across a clean piece of paper. And for this one, I'm actually going to skip using the lighter pink. I'm just going to go to the dark pink right away. And I am making sure to overlap the two colors. The overlap is not going to be as soft and as subtle as on the previous example, because I'm not really blending the two colors, if you will, because when I use an ink pad, I'm sort of able to blend the colors together. Here, I'm not able to do that. So the color transition is going to be a little bit more harsh, but it's still going to look nice. So, okay, I think this is good. I'm going to, again, use my fresh piece of paper, put it on the blank side of the embossing folder, not the blank, the clean side. Close my embossing folder and emboss it in my machine. I'll be right back to show you what it looks like. Okay, so here I've embossed it, and here's our result. Now with this ink application method, you do get a much more vibrant ink color on your background. Like when we compare these two, you can see that the yellow is a lot more vibrant compared to this yellow. And the same with the pink, it's a lot more vibrant, but you do have those hard edges where the two colors of ink meet. You could potentially go over the areas where the two colors meet, where you've applied them with a brayer. You can go over with an ink pad and dab it lightly to soften that edge if you wanted to. So that's another trick that you can use to have a really nice background. I think I like the softer background more. I do like how vibrant this yellow is, but I also like how soft the whole background looks.
So to finish these cards, I pulled out these two stamp sets from Simon Says Stamp. These are the Just Because Word Mix 2 and Love and Valentine's Word Mix 2 sets. And I also used the coordinating dies to cut the sentiments out. I stamped Love You, Sending Happy Thoughts, and You're in My Heart sentiments using the same Avery L pigment inks I've used to ink up my embossing folder. Pigment inks are actually fantastic for stamping solid backgrounds such as these sentiments, but they do take a very long time to dry, so be careful as you might smudge the stamping if you use pigment ink for your sentiment stamping as well. I trimmed my panels down slightly and foam mounted each onto an A2 white side folding card base. I also used foam adhesive tape to pop the sentiments up on these cards, as I always like to add dimension to my projects. You can skip using foam tape if you plan to mail these cards. I did experiment a little bit with the sentiment placement as I didn't want to place all of the sentiments in the center, although the center looks like to be the best spot to house the sentiment. I also picked some very pretty white jewels from Pretty Pink Posh and used those to embellish the cards. I really like how they add the softness to this design. So here's the look at the 3 cards I have for you today, created with the new 3D embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp. I hope you found this video useful. If you make a card inspired by this video, I'd love it if you shared your project online and tagged me on social media. I always enjoy seeing what you guys are making. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet done so. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Bye!